We are live. I think we're live. Channel, how are we doing? Welcome, everybody. It is the third Wednesday of the month. Is that when we do this? Whatever. It is after KubeCon Cloud Native Con. Everybody is tired, and it is the last Kubernetes office hours of the year. Those of you in the office hours channel, please let us know how the audio is sounding and all that good stuff. Welcome, everybody. So what is this? This is the Kubernetes office hours. What we do is once a month, we get on YouTube, and then we try to answer as many of your user questions about Kubernetes as possible with a panel of experts. Before we get started, panel, introduce yourselves. I didn't really give you an order, so let's go Joel, Bob, Chris, Jeff, Mario.
Hey everyone, I'm Joel. I work currently for a company called Pusher for the next 3 days. And I've been doing lots of stuff. Actually, I haven't done any work in ages. I don't know what I'm doing right now. I do lots of Kubernetes stuff. What else, guys?
Hi, I'm Bob Killen. I work for the University of Michigan as a research cloud administrator. I do a lot of random upstream stuff as far as a lot of things on-prem, federation type thingies, so the whole slew of random stuff.
My name's Chris. I work for the City of Ottawa as a senior developer integrator with the DevOps team. For the last 2 cycles, I've been part of SIG release, and yeah, try to do as much Kubernetes stuff as I possibly can, day-to-day, general admin stuff, so kind of jack of all trades.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Sika. I'm a senior software engineer at Red Hat. I do a lot of end-to-end testing for managed products there. Kubernetes upstream, I've done a lot with SIG release, SIG UI, and SIG contribx. And I'm also a general cat herder, as you can see, or cat whisperer. Bye.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Mario Loria. I currently work for StockX in downtown Detroit, Michigan. Lately, I have been really into intelligent metrics, auto scaling, and ingress, as well as EKS and other assorted cloud deployment strategies, et cetera. So thanks.
Awesome. And I'm your host, George Castro. I work at VMware, and I help organize and put all this together. Before we start, just a quick note out to the audience that this panel is all volunteers. If you want to get back to the community and sit on this panel, it's a great way to get started in Kubernetes. I'm going to pop a link into Slack there. That's Chris did his very first talk at KubeCon. So we're really happy when people start contributing to Kubernetes. And the next thing you know, you're speaking at KubeCon. And today we're congratulating Joel, who starts at Red Hat in the new year, and he's going to be working on actual Kubernetes itself. So if you're looking for a Kubernetes career, giving back to office hours is a good place to start. Okay, so let's get started here. Let me give everybody the quick ground rules before we get started. Those of you that are in the channel that have been around before, go ahead and start typing your question. And what we do is we put them in a little document, we queue them up, and then we'll get through as many of them as possible. So before we start, this is a judgment-free zone. Everyone had to start from somewhere. There are no dumb questions, so please help us out. Even if you think the question's a little bit too easy or whatever, there are no easy questions either. And please do remember that the CNCF Kubernetes Code of Conduct is in effect. And while we will do our best to answer your questions, the panel doesn't have access to your cluster. So we can't really live debug into your nodes and stuff like that. But we will do our best to get you moving down to whatever the next step is, wherever the log is, where you should be looking, that sort of things. Panelists, you are encouraged to expand on your answers with your experiences and your pro tips. Audience, you can help us out by typing along as we're answering questions. Maybe you have links to the official documentation, or you have experience in this. A lot of the value that we get isn't just from the people in the panel, but the people in the audience kind of taking the time to be like, okay, everybody, let's focus on this one topic, and sharing your expertise. That's what it's all about. And I have been known to just randomly give out t-shirts to people who are just doing an awesome job. Please feel free to just post your questions to the channel. You can post them on discuss.kubernetes.io, Stack Overflow, whatever. If you have the information somewhere, just give it a link, paste bin. And you can always help us out by tweeting, spreading the word, and paying it forward. Before we get started, though, I'd like to thank Giant Swarm, StockX, Pivotal, Pusher.com, Weaveworks, VMware, the University of Michigan, Red Hat, Utility Warehouse, and the City of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada for letting their engineers come sit in with us. And this could be you. And always a special thanks to the CNCF for sponsoring our t-shirt giveaway. So if you ask a question, we will put you into a little raffle and we give away 2 t-shirts at the end of the hours. But you must be present to win. So you got to listen to the whole show. Sorry. And with that, panel, we ready? Audience, how are we sounding out there? Sounds like the audio's sounding great. If you don't have any questions, just let us know you're out there. We do stream the Slack channel in the live stream. So tell us where you're from, say hello, whatever. Keep it interesting. All right, we ready, everybody? Give me a thumbs up. All right, the first question is from Minifig. Thanks for joining us. Goes, the background on the example I have might be a little bit complicated, but I'm going to ask anyway. Are there known best practices for running container images not really designed for Kubernetes, such as, and then they whacked in a link there to a Samba domain container, which has a complex script as its CMD and doesn't minimize secret usage on Kubernetes? Any pros and cons I should know about? So I think this is a great question, because one of the things when I got started in Kubernetes, I just kind of randomly assumed I could just scroll through Docker Hub and this was all just this wonderful stuff that I could do. And I wasn't thinking about A, security, B, are these things designed to be, horizontally scaled? Aren't all containers the same? Doesn't just forcing things in a container kind of make them work in Kubernetes? So someone explain to me and Minifig here how this all works.
I'll say I hate to say this, but like it depends. Every application is going to be different. Specifically looking at the Samba domain one, I have run this sort of stuff in a container before, and I've had various issues where it really doesn't like it when the IP changes, and sort of a lot of other things like that. You could use a stateful set so that we at least we'll always have a consistent name, and some things work well with that. But again, I hate to say it, but it is very, very application specific, and there's no going to be sort of generic best practices out there for it.
Anyone have experience with something like this where you found a container that maybe wasn't?
Yeah, we have a lot of old Java apps that were designed basically just to run on a single server. So, sessions and things like that would kind of go nuts if we started scaling out with different instances on the user end. So kind of like what Bob said, we try to make sure that they run in instance of one, so we don't run into those hurdles. So you kind of have to know what your application's limitations are, what they're designed to do, and what could happen if you start giving us some of those Kubernetes-esque behaviors.
Chris, follow up for you, since you mentioned it. Do you find yourself using something like maybe stateful sets for these older apps that get scared?
Should.
Okay.
Right now, we've just been kind of kicking the tires with them, so they're sitting in deployments. But a more appropriate way to run it would be a stateful set, or pin it to a single node to make sure that it doesn't do anything unexpected.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually the pinning it to a specific host is definitely one thing, especially when they care about the host IP and things of that nature. You do lose sort of a lot of the power of Kubernetes and sort of running this stuff in HA.
Sure.
But when you're dealing with legacy applications, you sort of got to take what you can get, and you still do gain a lot of benefits, like just the general better adoption of we're keeping track of everything in Git now, and we know exactly what's deployed. Sort of what you get if you're managing stuff with Ansible or Salt, but a bit more in a Kubernetes container way.
Yeah, and he's following up with I'm hearing a lot of stateful sets and are potentially using host networking.
Yep, the host stateful sets give you a persistent identity for the container, so it'll always be sort of the name of the thing -0, -1, depending on how many instances you have. And so things that care about its identity and being consistent, stateful sets work really well. And host networking is really if it assumes it's going to be managing ports on the host, and you need to have that persistent IP.
Last bit, you said mentioning pinning something to a specific node. What do I Google for to figure out how to do that? Is that a taint or an affinity or?
There's a node affinity.
Okay.
I'd have to. I don't remember like what it is off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
There is a node selector.
Yeah, there we go.
So you can,
Okay, awesome. And as Minifig just did here, if we ask a question, you have a follow-up, feel free to just keep on typing and we'll grab that information as we go. Hopefully that'll get you started, Minifig. Please ask a follow-up. Next comes Simone. Thanks for joining. Says, I have a pod which used to be unreachable. It can only ping the host where it is running. Any idea on how to check what is going on? I've tried the usual route-n, ss-tulpin. That's how I say it. IP tables, VNXL, and they seem fine, as in they are exactly the same as other hosts, which are working fine. The pod is in a stateful set with 3 replicas, and only 1 replica is showing the issue. Weird. Okay. Who wants to take a stab at that? I'm going to see if they have any follow-up info.
I'm just trying to think. Anytime we've had some of those issues, there's something misconfigured on the specific host. Not sure what environment you're running on, but it could be firewall, networking, some of the usual suspects. If you can get into the pod and check the logs, that's normally a good place to start.
Also check the CNI logs on that host itself. That's where I've seen consistent issues.
Okay, so probably CNI logs is a good place to start. Simone, that should help you get started. If you have a follow-up and you've tried that or something, just let us know. And then we'll wait for him or her to respond. In the meantime, Matt says, I'm getting a search error, kubectl get pods, and then you all see the error there in the notes. How do I upgrade this and other certs? I've tried kubeadmin alpha, phase certs, API server, kubectl client, or kubelet client. I get the error, the cert is expired. I also noticed that my directory is etc Kubernetes SSL and not etc/Kubernetes/PKI. Any idea what's going on here? I think someone responded to them.
Were you at one point using Rancher? Because I think they use it's under Kubernetes SSL. Everything I know, at least with kubeadm, uses PKI.
I see people typing, so we'll give them a minute here.
I have a feeling that kubeadm a long time ago used to use etc Kubernetes SSL originally, and I think they've moved it. So what I think has probably happened here is this controller node, or whichever one it is, looks like a controller, has just been up for such a long time, probably a year or so, and not been replaced, that it doesn't regenerate the certs. If I remember correctly, or at least at one point, kubeadm used to generate the certs as the controller node started. They had a little application that did that. So if you could add a new controller to the cluster and take this one away, maybe that would solve the problem without having to dig in any further.
Yeah. So he says, I use an Ansible playbook running 1.11.9 in an offline environment. So it could very well be that
it could well be that it's just been there for a long time, and
they're still
I don't think they expect nodes to live for that long.
Yes, if I upgrade, this would resolve.
Yeah, 1.11 is essentially off support at this point. They specifically made it so the certs will expire after a year, so it's sort of forces you to update.
Let's see, they're still tied. Oh no, they're kind of tied to 1.11 with some of our configs. What I was thinking is
still replace the controller without upgrading it, right? You just bring up a new 1.11 controller, and then take that older one away. I don't know what environment if you're on a cloud provider or something, that should be relatively easy. If you're on bare metal, that's going to be harder. 1.11's gone.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if you could, but you can't. I was going to say, could you use a kubeadmin to set up a new controller? But kubeadmin is not going to be able to do 1.11.
No.
Right? It's going to force you to do.
Unfortunately, I think you're kind of on your own in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like an upgrade is going to be your
alternatively, if you can, I don't know if, because we sort of copy and pasted a load of code for how the certificate stuff works into ours. We have it as a systemd unit, and I can't remember whether that's what they had as well, like a one-shot systemd that when the controller starts up does the certificate signing, because you need to know the node's IP and stuff to do the certificates.
Yeah.
Maybe if you SSH into the node, you can find that systemd unit or the code that generates the kube certificates and rerun it. Because I'm pretty sure if the certificates have expired, it will regenerate them. If I remember correctly, but I did this a long time ago.
And I would definitely get a second opinion as well. I mean, it's out of support, but I'm sure you're not the only person doing that. Obviously, we don't know what your work environment is. I don't want you to go to work and be like, we have to upgrade and rip down everything. So definitely take that into consideration. But yeah, I mean, one of the problems with Kubernetes is you have to stick. You've got to be pretty aggressive at doing your updates and stuff, which is awesome, but also terrible at the same time. It's just a bummer. When stuff like this, when this happens, it's just right.
kubeadm has also gone through a lot of changes, but it's now essentially GA, and the configs and like stuff like that isn't going to change. Our clusters have actually been upgraded in place now for over 2 years. And we did everything with kubeadm.
Yeah, I think once you get to the right spot with kubeadm, especially minor point releases are just, I don't want to say trivial because nothing's trivial, but they seem to be a lot better these days. So
sort of our strategy for this stuff is we, like 117 was just dropped. We will just be upgrading our stuff to 116. We stay one major revision behind what the upstream is released.
So bummer about that answer, Matt, but hopefully that will get you the information that you needed. Everyone, good thoughts for Matt. All right, moving on. Emmanuel asks, hi, y'all. I'm new in the channel. Welcome. There's 2 questions they want to ask. So we'll go with the first. Have you ever used Metal LB to externally expose a kube service? If yes, have you experienced any issue? I've tried to set up service of load balancer type with Metal LB, and I correctly get an IP accessible from the LAN, but when I try to reach the service IP using ping or any other tool, I see the service IP is not reachable.
Is this like we use Metal LB for all our stuff? Is the IP range that you've allocated to it actually routable on the host? One of the most common issues I see is people just assume, like, give an IP range to it, but don't actually set up all the routes for the networking itself to support it.
Okay, and it looks like they're typing. Well, yes, it's in the same IP class of the host.
Are you using BGP or I'm totally brain farting on the other one. Layer 2.
And they're typing. So host is 192.168.0.2, service is 192.168.0.100.
And is 0. Is like 192.168.0/24 routable on your network?
Says, yep, they're in the /24.
Yeah, that one I don't know, because like I have not encountered any problems with that like that.
Okay, well, we'll keep that one on chat. We'll get back to it here, so we can move on. Does anyone have any experience with Samba plus Active Directory in a pod? Do you know if it's possible? I can't find any documentation on this. Is there a way to reset from scratch the IP tables rule on worker nodes, even if I don't have an IP table saved backup? It seems that in one of my clusters, I have some missing IP tables rules for Kubernetes. I've deleted all the kubeproxy pod to recreate the correct IP tables rules, but it seems that this is not enough. Let's see. This one's confusing to me.
So I don't have anything on the Azure, I'm sorry, the Samba AD in a pod. I'm going to highly recommend you look into just using Azure, as they have this all cloud set up and easy to use. On IP tables, I I mean, you could definitely flush rules, but when you're starting to do things like that and you're starting to have issues like you're talking about, something is just not right. So I urge you to take a kind of 10,000 foot step back and look at how things are being deployed. Usually, kubeproxy operates well on its own enough that you shouldn't have to go and manually tune IP tables rules. I haven't done a bare metal deployment in a while, so I could be wrong on that. Maybe there's some extra foo you need to do, but yeah, usually when you have to manually care about IP tables is when there is some pretty core problem to the deployment. So.
And it looks like Minifig is setting that up, but he hasn't gotten there yet. So maybe at a minimum, we could connect people here together. And if anybody in the audience has any tips here about this metal LB issue that he's having, that would help out.
One thing I will say about the IP table stuff is I would try and make sure that you don't have anything else that's managing IP tables. Like just let Kubernetes manage the host. Don't run anything else that's going to mess around with it. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time.
Mm-hmm. And Minifig strongly recommends that you don't do what I'm doing. All right. So let's keep those questions opening there. Let's keep those open there and we can come back to them, or if anybody has an idea. But moving on to Ravi Shankar, welcome. They have a question. It says, we have a large Kubernetes cluster with 400 plus computers on GCE, self-managed with Calico overlay. Recently, we're observing problems with Calico mesh creation delays. What's the suggested approach here? Is Calico route reflector the right approach? I don't know anything about this.
It's been a while since I've used Calico.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really used it that much, although the AWS CNI is based off of it. This might be a question for SIG Network / the Calico people themselves. Maybe you're in an edge case where you have so many hosts that they just haven't really seen a use case like that, and maybe you found some bugs or something like that. But yeah, I can't definitively say yay or nay if there's like, yes, you should be using it. No, there's something better, etc. So,
is 400 considered a lot for a network overlay?
400 nodes?
Yeah.
In a cluster, I would say decently big. Yeah.
The one thing are you using, was it Canal, or what's the flannel Calico thing?
It's Canal. Canal is the
in general, like if you can avoid an overlay network, you will. That tends to be better.
Yeah, I was just wondering at what number of nodes do the overlays start to really show their overhead? You know what I mean? Like, is it 400? Is it 1,000?
It's generally not like the amount of nodes, but how much you're pushing through.
Okay. Okay, unfortunately, it appears that Calico is not on the Kubernetes Slack, but Chris has dropped a link to the Project Calico Slack, so hopefully they'll be able to help you out. Sorry about that. Back to Emmanuel's question, says, yeah, regarding Samba, I cannot use Azure because they're doing on-prem. Is there any way to do it in an on-premise environment? Just a quick question, Emmanuel, is Samba a requirement, or do you just need Active Directory? I'm wondering if we can ask our friends over at SIG Windows if that's an option for you. And then Minifig goes, wait, the office hours folks haven't used Calico. What do people do for network policy? Quick round of CNI opinions. Go. Joel, Bob, Chris, Jeff, Mario.
Using Canal. Just not at that scale.
Yeah. So Canal that's technically Calico, right? Or is it a different beast now?
It's the same. It's a Calico project.
Yeah, okay. Calico project, it is. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay.
We're using Flannel for our CNI, a couple of 100 node scale, and that's fine for us. Like, we haven't seen any network impact really. But yeah, don't really have security policy stuff so much nailed yet.
Bob, which one do you like?
Cilium. Again, I'm wearing the shirt.
Yeah, Bob is a big Cilium fan.
I love eBPF and XDP, and being able to do all sorts of crazy fun things with like advanced network policies.
Okay, and Jeff and Mario, what do y'all use?
I follow Bob.
Mario?
I also prefer Cilium. I think what they're doing for the community and some of the problems they're solving are outright just more thoughtful than some of the other CNIs. They're not just a basic, install the CNI and go. They've really put thought into the problems that modern enterprises are facing, and it's really a powerful CNI, like Bob said, eBPF, et cetera. So right now we're using the AWS CNI, and I'm looking to move us to Cilium and get all the fancy features nicely. So
awesome. And audience, if you have strong opinions on CNI, feel free to plop them in there. Emmanuel goes on to say, let's see. Looks like Matt has some experience with Metal LNB and external IPs that might be able to help. My need is to use a Samba pod and join a domain controller from it. Okay, so Windows not an option. All right, let's keep that one open then while we move over to Brendan's question. Sorry we couldn't help you out as much there, Ravi. Brandon asks, what are some techniques for debugging a Helm deployment? I have a failure that seems non-deterministic, and the rather short error output from Helm makes it look like something is getting corrupted in the creation of the JSON from my YAML.
usually Helm will, so what I usually run with the debug dry run flags before I do anything, and usually that gives me there's also a Helm lint command that we use, especially in our pipelines, that usually gives me like somewhere in the YAML where like I'm being stupid, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that doesn't look right, and I can usually find what's going on there. Other than that, I'm not sure on anything more advanced than that. I know there's I forget what the channel is in Slack. I used to be in it all the time. There was a Helm users channel. There it is. So you could also ask them there if the error just isn't making sense. But for the most part, it's generally something in the template where you're trying to use a variable and the type is wrong, or there's a misplaced character, etc. Those tend to be the errors that I seem to find. So mostly because, again, I'm just stupid.
Yeah, he says they're using lint dry run and debug and nothing pops up there.
Have you tried running it through kubeval or the output? It might be kind of what Mary was saying. It might be formatting weird.
What's this?
Right. So there's a Helm template command that can build the manifest, and then you can pipe that into kubeval. And you probably want to use it with the strict option as well. I haven't looked at it in a while. It's not tied to Kubernetes officially. It's just an open source project from someone in the community. But
cool.
Yeah, we actually do that in our pipeline as well. We couldn't use strict because it didn't recognize the latest API for like HPA or something. This was months ago, but I definitely would run it through there, because if Helm thinks everything is fine, it's not the Helm chart, then it's something Kubernetes side. And that's, so thank you, Chris, for mentioning that. I should have said something. So
that is good to know. Part of the reason we do this is we can learn about new tools, and those of you listening in, we'll grab all the URLs that are mentioned during the show and whack them in the show notes. He goes, Helm manifest was also something I was unaware of. These are definitely some new options to dig into. Awesome. Woo, we needed a win. We had some tough questions today, so hopefully that'll help you out. Let us know, Brendan, how that goes. All right, moving on. We're about halfway through. Those of you joining us on YouTube, welcome. This is the Kubernetes Office Hours. Ask your questions in Slack. That's #office-hours. In the live stream, follow the instructions below, and you'll be able to join the channel. Feel free to ask your questions. We'll queue them up, and then if we ask your question, we will put you in a raffle to give you a t-shirt at the end of the show. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Okay, moving on. The next question is from Dimitri.
Hold on 1 sec.
Sorry.
So we missed a second part of a question.
We did.
What's the suggested approach? Is Calco route reflector the right approach here? Is that what you're getting at?
Yep. Okay, hold on. Let me look at chat. Is Ravi still here?
It was
typing?
posted by Vinakia.
Oh, okay. They're just pointing out we missed a section question. Okay, all right. Let me reread this. Okay, so Ravi said we had a large Kubernetes clusters, 400 nodes, self-managed with Calico, and now they're getting delays with mesh creation. And then they go on to say, what's the suggested approach here? Is Calico Route Reflector the right approach?
I'm not, if you're having problems currently, I don't know if it would help out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm unsure on this one as well.
It's like, you usually implement like a route reflector at your top of rack switches, but this is.
Yeah.
There's actually some more stuff on the question. I'm just pasting it in the
There we go. Okay, so Calico Route Reflector was last updated many months back. Not sure if this is maintained anymore. Also, how do we tweak this in a live cluster? Secondly, we see delays in daemon set pods getting created on newly joined minions via kubeadmin. Specifically, kube proxy and Calico node, there's no etcd latencies observed, or in the kube control plane. How do we debug this?
I'm not sure about tweaking it in a live cluster as far as the some of those settings.
Yeah.
I would definitely talk to the Calico folk, like hop into their Slack and talk to them directly. The second question, and what daemon set pods getting created?
Do you think those delays are just a symptom of the bigger problem there?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the default sync intervals, is it a minute or 2 minutes on nodes checking in on what they should be running? Like, what sort of delay are you, like, how big is the delay that you're seeing? Because you can also check it, like, how long does it take for it to pull the pod or pull the image and then sync all that stuff?
It looks like they were typing, but then not typing. Hold on, here we go. Oh, interesting. Andrew says, have you tried running Bird as a...
Yeah, Bird is what I believe Calico uses under the hood.
Okay. Generally, the daemon sets take 30 seconds to 1 minute to come up on the new node.
Okay. Is that it being like scheduled on the node or like time to pull the image?
Ooh, lots of people typing now. Good.
And 30 seconds to a minute is something I consider relatively reasonable.
Yeah, I was going to say,
so nodes usually check in on an interval to see, like, when they have new work. If the node is fresh, it might be like another minute before it actually sees what it should run.
Can you tweak that interval? Would you want to?
Yes and no. Like,
okay.
It does increase the amount of check-ins. Like, it does increase the load on your API server and etc. But depending on how beefy those are,
I'm wondering,
it shouldn't be too much of an issue.
Yeah, they're saying there's no etcd latencies, or in the kube control plane, maybe you could just bump it a little bit. You know what I mean?
Like, I would definitely take, like, essentially just watch, add a new node and watch the kubelet logs, watch, some of the other stuff there to see what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm. Do you all typically run large clusters or a bunch of little ones? Because I know my field people, like the Duffies of the world, are really around. Once you get it to 100, make a new one kind of thing. But then you have manage multiple clusters, right?
Treat your clusters like cattle.
Yep, I'm with Bob or Jeff on that one. I think that when a cluster gets too big, whenever you go to make a change, that change gets more scary. And I think having risk that high, especially for production workloads, is just not something I would want to deal with or have on my memory when or on my head when I'm trying to do an upgrade or roll a new daemon set to update something or tune the CNI or edit policies, etc. So we actually here, we don't have a ton of applications, but we separate like front end versus back end. I'm actually thinking of creating another one as well because backend's getting pretty hefty. So it's not really number of nodes per se; it's more number of services for me.
Okay, number of yeah, good to think about. All right, Bob is typing with Ravi now. We'll let them keep swapping info, and then we'll get back to that. Let's bust out Dimitri's question here real quick. Bob will just keep typing. Dimitri says, hey guys, I have a 3-node cluster running on EKS. Each node is on a different zone, A, B, and C. From my understanding, a pod with its PVC in A cannot run in zone B due to the PVC being in A. Is this correct? How can I resolve this issue?
So I actually don't do any, I feel really stupid. I don't really do any stateful workloads across zones. But a coworker of mine, for EKS at least, has done this. And that is the case where you have to have a node group per zone. And then you schedule a workload, and that workload does need to stay in the node group where the zone that the PVC exists in. There really isn't a workaround. I'm not sure on the power of your EBS or EFS, whatever you're using, in terms of replication across zones. I'm not that'd be an AWS construct. I just don't know because I haven't had a need to use that. But I presume that most clouds now are probably providing some other way of providing the storage across zones, especially since zones are meant to be incredibly fast between themselves. So I would say look at what AWS offers. Maybe talk to an AWS rep. If you're running EKS, they should be able to support you in that realm. But I know from an EKS like deployment standpoint, using EKS ETL, you definitely have to have the separate node groups. And then I believe the PVC ends up pinning the pod to that zone where the storage is. So sorry, I can't be more helpful.
Check out what Miguel just posted there on Slack.
I think it depends on what backs your persistent volumes as well, because if you use EBS, then it is attached to a zone because all the disks are directly attached to the nodes and you end up in the same zone. If you use something like EFS instead, it's slower. You've also got bursting capabilities, like you can provision that now. But EFS isn't zone locked. So we use EFS for our Prometheus storage, and that works-ish for us, and it can run on any node and any zone. But we don't use EKS, so I don't know if that holds true for EKS, but it might do.
Okay, I should have just shut my mouth and let Joel talk because I don't know what I'm talking about. Thank you, Joel. Yeah, EKS should be roughly the same, I think. So, and then I know EKS CTL has some strapping in there for defining volumes and whatnot when you deploy a cluster and things. So yeah, I would definitely look at the documentation there, but that should be possible. Depending on your needs, you could probably go to EFS because EFS is just effectively NFS, I think. So
let's see what Miguel has to say. He seems to be doing this already.
Yeah, I think you're right with that.
Which is really handy. Thanks, like Miguel, for your tips. Those are appreciated. Lots of people typing. Let's see what's happening. All right, while people are typing, Andrew Y, welcome, asks team, are developers asking if regular Kubernetes pods support sending/receiving multicast, and if Kubernetes itself supports control plane protocols as IGMP or PIM? Maybe you could shed some light on this.
I think the multicast is going to be up to the CNI. Bob would know more about this than me.
Hold on, I think Bob has his hand full.
Sort of, they can, but it's not generally done.
Like, FC says if you use Weave as your CNIs, you should be able to support multicast.
Yeah, like it is like things do it, and they'll do multicast within multicast, or sorry. So like VXLAN and a lot of the overlay networks themselves rely on multicast, and you can use multicast within that, but it's more of an anti-pattern than anything else.
Yeah, Andrew, I think it might help with, I hate to go down this road of like, what are you trying to accomplish here? But if you could give us a use case, it might be able to figure out exactly how to get to your end goal there. FC would like to add on the Weave supporting multicast, I doubt it will do membership registration. And people still talk about EFS. Keep that conversation going. All right. Any other tips or questions on this? We have about 20 minutes left, so feel free to continue to ask your questions. That would be fantastic. Jeff, if you could pop over into Kubernetes users and let them know that we are going, we could use more questions. That'd be great. Or if anybody has a follow-up, feel free to keep on asking while we figure out manage NFS, whether it's fun or not. I do have a question about the zones that Dimitri was asking about there. With a PVC being in one zone, isn't that on purpose? Is I guess what I'm trying to add. Like, do they not want you to do that? Cross zones like that?
It depends on the storage that you're using. So if you're using block storage, that block storage EBS is provided by nodes just in that one zone. That's why you have to stay in a node group in that one zone. EFS is network mounted. So this is block versus file storage, George.
Okay, got you.
Having a bunch of like a Dell server and doing block storage mounted in versus a NAS kind of thing.
Okay. Awesome. And FC goes on to say that Weave does claim full multicast support. That's for our other question there. Okay. So let's finish up then on the EFS thing. Do we have any consensus here?
I think he's leaning toward EFS now, and it looks like Joel is saying there's a nice thing that can attach to any pod and any AZ, which is probably what he wants. He probably doesn't have like strict need for intense IOPS, so he probably could be safe with using EFS, or at least try it for his workload and see what happens. So I think that one we can probably close the case on that. I know there's people doing that already too, so there should be plenty of docs and support, probably in state cloud provider too.
Yeah, one final tip I'd put on that is when you create the EFS, I want to say bucket, but I don't think they call it a bucket. Then try and look at provisioning your IOPS. It used to be kind of like burst based, it used to be proportional to how much data you had stored in it. So we needed more throughput than it could offer. So we just wrote a bunch of zeros to fill up some space to get more throughput. Terrible idea. Eventually we managed to get rid of that, and actually you can just pay for more IOPS if you need to. So yeah, make sure to provision your IOPS appropriately.
Awesome. Any other tips? Mar, you're on AWS. Are you using EFS?
No, we actually, all of our workloads are mostly stateless, and if they have state, it's in Redis or a database. So we have no need for it, which I am incredibly happy about that, because dealing with storage is something I do not want to do. I love storage, but distributed storage is a hard problem. So but I would definitely look at EFS if I was going to have to use something, because I really like cross zone separation and redundancy there for failover and whatnot.
Sure. And it looks like he's using this storage for Prometheus data. And Joel says that's exactly what you use EFS for. So that's good to know. Every time I find out someone else is also using it in Anger, that makes me
I should actually say one thing. Prometheus itself really doesn't like being stored on NFS or EFS or anything like that. Like, they explicitly warn you against it because of some of the way it handles writing to it. Joel, it looked like you have some comments there.
I was just going to say, we are well aware that we're not meant to be doing this, but it does seem to work for us. So like, we haven't really seen any problems with it. Occasionally we get a failed compaction, but for the most part, it's been fine. But I think it really depends on how much scale you've got. Like on our biggest clusters, unfortunately, we are running Prometheus with like a 60 gig memory footprint at the moment, because we haven't got around to doing the project to split it out into smaller Prometheis. So like, we're just running this huge one, and it works. It hasn't fallen over as we thought it might. Just chucking more memory at it solved the problem for a bit. I know it's not a long-term solution. I wouldn't recommend that long-term, but That's what.
There's some NFS like mount options that will help with some of the problems. I'm totally about what it is. Do you remember what it was, Jeff? We did for I think with Postgres.
That was a couple years ago. It was like I might actually have the code. One sec.
Yeah, and then Miguel would like to point out that he posted to a comment from from Frederick on why they don't advise this. So I think you definitely check it out. So that makes me curious on what the Prometheus folks do recommend. Are they just?
I wonder if you run 3 different or Prometheus instances per zone kind of thing and use block storage instead, and then they just talk amongst themselves.
So you can use something like Thanos or something else that will store it all, like dump it all to S3 buckets, and then when you go back for historical data, it'll just hit the S3 buckets.
Yeah. So someone asked Federer, any suggestions if we only have a NAS solution? Host path not possible, right? And he goes, local volumes are a good option.
Yeah, I would recommend local volumes with like fast turnover to something like Thanos.
Yeah. And then FC says we can run 2 instances of Prometheus in a separate zones with block storage. And I can't pronounce that name. Pierre says you can Prometheus with a database, right? Can you just set up like a hosted thing on cloud and dump all the Prometheus stuff in there? Yes, this got complicated quickly. So, all right. Hopefully, Dimitri, that gives you a bunch of options. Feel free to hang out here. That goes for everybody. Feel free to just keep on hanging out in the channel throughout the month, and let us know how you get on, because we do love to see when people solve their problems.
Coming back to Bob's thing, we were doing forcing NFS v4. We were setting mount options to soft and local lock equals flock, and that's what we got to get it working.
All right. And then thanks, Pierre, there for a link to the Prometheus docs that actually lists all the remote endpoints and storage options that you have with read and write. This is handy. So hold on. I got to bookmark this one. That is a good one. And we will definitely make sure we get all these URLs in the show notes, because that's a good one. Wow, there's a lot of places you can remote send Prometheus stuff. I haven't even heard of some of these. That's awesome. All right. Also, Dimitri, I hope that gives you some options there. Checking in, any word on Ravi's problem here?
We were talking about it in a thread.
Okay. All right. I will come back to you then. Let me look here. We have some new questions here. 1 second. Minifig has a question. Says, I'd love to hear opinions about IPv6/v4 dual stack now that it is out of alpha. I will just give everyone a quick warning here. I am going to try to get a SIG network specific office hours on the calendar for next year. I'm kind of shopping it around to the SIG network folks, so stay in tune for that. But quick opinions on dual stack. Anybody looking into this while I grab other questions?
Dual stack is still alpha.
It was alpha in 1.16. Is it beta in 1.17? Is that what you mean?
No, they're still working on
Okay, then maybe
working on taking it to beta.
It's still alpha, right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I just saw it. Yeah.
I mean, opinions.
Play with it at your own risk.
Awesome. Yeah, that too. It's alpha. It's awesome. We have no use case at all for it. But we're a very different type of needs and whatnot. So the basic stuff gets us by. I think for the more advanced deployments and as Kubernetes starts to penetrate enterprises, I think it's going to become something that's pivotal. And I'm really glad to see that the work has been done to get us there. So.
IPv6 is a myth that doesn't really exist. Did any of you see Hawkins talk on the dual stack at KubeCon? I am going to find that talk and stick it in the show notes while you all answer this next question from DevOps Day Manager. I guess that's what that means. I have 1,000 queue of work in my Redis system to assign parallel work queue, which is working only once after complete all pods in completed state. After some time, assign queue to Redis, which is not taking my work. Oh boy, I'm having a hard time with this question here. let me know how I can solve this issue. And then the link is this task with work queue here, which I will whack here. Can you guys understand the question? I cannot.
I don't know. I defer to Jeff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
this-
actually looking at this because this seems like an old example of how batch works. Because if you look, they're like referencing stuff from Kubernetes 1.3 in this example. So I'll look into this. Give me a minute and I might
Okay.
have an answer.
All right.
Yeah, this is actually something we should probably create an issue on SIG docs because it is definitely pulling from
Replication controllers. What's that?
from release 1.3.
And I almost got this one. All right, we're running towards the end of the show. While Jeff's doing that, we have time for maybe one or two questions. Bob, do you want to handle the raffle at the top? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Roll a 1 die 9. Well, I get this talk from Tim Hawking. I really want to get this in the show notes because I thought it was really good. Woo, it is definitely t-shirt times. In the meantime, Pierre wants to ask opinions, OpenFast versus Knative.
OpenFast is easier to set up and get going if you want to play with serverless. Knative is a much larger toolbox. So it's, what are you looking for? Just being able to run functions or actually being able to like build a much larger solution. So it's solution versus toolbox and kind of build your own.
Anyone else have opinions? I almost found that video for IPv6.
I've not actually used customized inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a new one to me.
So it is in this playlist somewhere. I'm just going to whack this in here. These are all the talks from KubeCon.
All right, so I kind of have I might have an answer for that whole work thing. As usual, it depends based on the behavior that you're describing. So the example is a bunch of Kubernetes batch jobs that are not actually, so the documentation is wrong. That's actually the first problem. The documentation is showing an example of a bunch of persistent pods that are popping tasks off of a stack and then running them, but they're keeping the pods alive.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully the panel gets what I mean. That's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, what you should be doing is having like your work queue as needed, whether that's, you know, in Redis or whether that's you actually creating individual batch jobs within Kubernetes and having it manage that. That's up to you. But the example is wrong because it is actually showing jobs as a persistent thing that is popping things off a Redis queue and executing them, but still staying alive. Whereas jobs should be one-off tasks, not task processes. That's probably not a good answer for you, and I'm sorry, but it's a combination of what are you doing plus the documentation is wrong, and we need to fix that.
Okay. We have time for my last question. Last question of 2019 goes to Miguel. Says, has anyone tried customize with a K inventory? Has a link there with the inventory object. Anyone have any opinions on this one here? And then we'll get on to the t-shirt raffle. We have our winners.
No opinions. Haven't played with Customize really.
Nobody has. Anybody in Slack? All right. So Bob has rolled a raffle, totally guaranteed to be random and scientific. I want to thank all of you that listened today. 217 of you tuned in. That is by far a world record for us. So thank you very much for participating. The winners are Dimitri and DevOps Day M. Weir. I don't know how to pronounce it. DevOps Day Manager. Sure. I will PM you after this and give you a code to the CNCF store so you can have your Kubernetes t-shirt. Anything else? Any last comments from the audience or the panel before we wrap it up? We will be back at the new year, as always, the third Wednesday of the month. If you're interested in contributing to Kubernetes, we have a sister program called Meet Our Contributors, which is more about asking questions on how you do a pull request, how do you get your changes into Kubernetes, that sort of thing. So we highly recommend you browse the Kubernetes YouTube channel this is posted on and check out some of our other programs, including mentorship and whatnot. As we said before, thanks everyone for coming. This is an all-volunteer panel. If you want to sit on this panel and help rotate out some of these people here so we can get more diverse opinions on it, we would really appreciate it. Yeah, and FC said, it kind of sucks that the last question of 2019 goes unanswered. Bring it on in 2020. So I think what I will do is I will actually tweet. Let's do this. We'll tweet for opinions on Customize on Twitter, and I'll get a bunch of responses from a bunch of people, and then we'll stick that in the show notes, and we'll just leverage the power of the community because the five of us can't figure that out.
Hey,
will that work for everybody? Or what?
I think it'll work, but can I actually ask the last question of 2019?
Sure.
This is a question for each of the panel, and I figured
Okay.
this is a nice way to end it.
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite memory of 2019? And George, you're going first, and I'll go last.
Favorite Kubernetes memory?
Yeah.
What do I have to go first? Oh, nuts. Probably KubeCon, Kelsey's keynote this year at San Diego. Those of you that have not seen that, it is in that playlist I put. Absolutely. I'm going to go with that. Yeah. Troy says KubeCon, but yeah.
Chris, what about you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I've had a few. Being part of this panel is definitely one of them. And then probably the one that gave me much joy, I think I did a little happy dance when I got it, was Sasha's invite to be part of the SIG release notes team.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Nice. Mario?
I would probably say discovering KEPs, and I think this year is when the KEP process got really fleshed out.
Good one.
Discovering, discovering a bunch of things that I had already been thinking about that people had already written 20 pages on and how to implement, and have now become alpha. So that's just super exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Joel?
I'd probably say doing my CKA. Like, I was really scared about doing it, but actually it was a lot of fun. Like, I really enjoyed doing the exam, which is super weird.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone say that before.
No, I really enjoyed it. Maybe I'm just strange.
I'm kind of with you in that camp. It was the first exam I didn't feel terrible about. Yeah, it was fun. It was challenging. That kind of fun.
Yeah.
Bob?
You know what I'm going to say. Honk fam. All the Honk CI, all the fun stuff that we did. So the extension of KubeCon.
Yeah, actually, that was what I was going to say too.
Yeah.
Was Contributor Summit, being able to like see all of our friends smile and laugh at our stupid little idea,
our little hijinks,
and then continuing it. So that I think is a nice way to end 2019.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really
Community.
good. Well, thanks everybody. This has been the most successful show of the year so far, viewership wise. We will have happy holidays, those of you who celebrate, and we will see everyone in a good year. Good luck, everybody, with your clusters. And if we didn't answer your question, please give us a shot again. Feel free to hang out in the channel. Feel free to let us know how it goes. If you find something, if you learn something, the thing that makes this community tick is sharing of that information. So we're happy to help spread it if you discover with it. Everybody have a great 2019, and we'll see everyone next year. Panel, stick around.